As the number one seed, it would appear that the Vegas Golden Knights are dominating the Pacific Division, but you would be wrong in thinking that. Not only are the Vegas Golden Knights only 2 points ahead of the second place Kings, but if certain things were to play out, the Golden Knights could be in a wild card before the end of the year. That's how close things are in the Pacific Division and in the entire Western Conference when we actually take a look at things. So, with all those implications, I kind of want to take a look at the current standings, how the playoffs will work, and how soon we could be talking about the actual series we're going to be seeing in the playoffs. But before we get into any of that, I have one question for you, and that's going to be, who do you think will be in the playoffs from the Pacific Division? Do you think it's going to lay out exactly how it is now? And it doesn't, I don't need your order. Do you think it's going to end up how it is now with, Golden Knights, Kings, Kracken, Oilers? Do you think the Flames are going to jump in there or a different team? And do you see, I guess, if you want to talk about exact standings, do you see a different team flip-flopping in the wild card and Seattle moving up or a different thing like that? Comment all that down below. I'd love to have a conversation with you guys. But let's not waste any more of your time. Let's go and get right into things. And the first thing I kind of want to look at is going to be the standings. As mentioned, the Vegas Golden Knights sit at the number one seed in the Pacific Division. As you can kind of see right here, they have 94 points. And 94 points is very, very solid. It definitely is, especially at this point in the season with 71 games played. And that's going to put you in a really, really good spot. But as mentioned, the Kings are only 2 behind them with 92, same number of games played. The Oilers have 88 with the same number of games played. That puts you 3 games behind. And you look down at the wild card, and the Kraken have 85. So the Knights have a good lead on the wild card spot. But if things were to play out right before the end of the season, and Knights go on a little bit of losing streak, Seattle goes on a little bit of winning streak, they could flip-flop very, very quickly. With that being said, this could move quite easily. I think the Vegas has been a great team all year, and I expect them to land at that 1 seed by the end of the year. They've looked so, so good, even with all these injuries. The goalie injuries especially, they've still been able to maintain that number 1 seed. And I don't remember last time they weren't the number 1 seed. So I expect them to stay the number 1 seed, but I wouldn't be surprised if they fell to the 2 seed, to the 3 seed. I would be a little surprised if they made it to the wild card, but at the same time, that Seattle team's a lot better than their points, if we're being honest. They've kind of went on a little bit of a rough patch here the past couple of weeks to month, but they're still a really, really solid team, so I wouldn't be too surprised if there was some movement here in the Pacific or in the entirety of the West. We take a look at the, what Central Division, I think it's called. Dallas is sitting on top with 90. Minnesota's tied with them at 90 on a very hot goalie. And as we all know, Marc-Andre Fleury, 6-game win streak, .923 save percentage, a .223 goals against average. He tried to start a fight. That team is moving like crazy. The Avalanche have 2 games in hand still, 88 points. They could jump to the top here if they had the same number of games. They have the best winning percentage out of that division entirely. They could move up. The whole Western Conference is packed full of really, really good teams, and this whole thing could shift in a week, in a month, before the end of the year. This whole thing could look dramatically different. So I kind of want to take a look at the standings first and kind of talk our way through some of that. Although I think Vegas will remain on top, I think there's going to be movement throughout the rest of the Western Conference. And a lot of it, if I'm being honest. So the next thing I kind of want to talk about here is going to be how the playoffs work. And it can be a little bit confusing, especially if you're coming from other sports like basketball or football. Hockey, how it works, and this is important for you as we kind of take a look back over here. We'll talk about this in a second. Hockey, you're going to have your best seed in the entire conference. So Western Conference, for example, would be the best seed would be the Vegas Golden Knights. And that team would go against the worst of the 2 wildcard spots. And then the winner of the other division within that conference. So if Vegas wins in the Pacific, the Central Division would be the winner. The Central Division winner would go against the wild card better of the 2, if that makes sense. And then you're going to have your 2 and 3 seed within each division go against each other. And that will be the same for the Eastern Conference. So we'll take a look back over here so I can explain it to you guys a little bit better. I'm sure most of you understand, but there's still some confusion at times because we've went through a couple changes in the playoffs. And apparently there's talks of more changes coming to the playoffs, and I like it how it is. So we'd have Vegas against the Jets down here. We would have the Stars against Seattle. Then we'd have Minnesota versus Avalanche and Kings versus Oilers. That would be how matchup would sit right now. And of course, I told you this could change. Now that we've kind of looked at that, explain how it worked, I want to look at the teams Vegas could play, because that's important here, who they could play in the playoffs and how those things would kind of roll out. First, let's look if Vegas stays at the 1 seed, which means they would play the worst of the 2 wildcards. Now, the thing here is those wildcards could change and flip. The other division could end up with a better record than Vegas, and then Vegas would play the better of the 2 wildcards, if that makes sense. So if the Stars ended with more points than the Knights, then the Knights would play the better of the 2 wildcards. They're playing the worst of the 2 because they're the better. Nonetheless, you could be facing the Jets, which is what's expected right now, or you could be playing the Kracken. So the Vegas Golden Knights are 3-0 versus the Jets. That would be the preferred matchup. Obviously, you're 3-0 against that team. Let's take them on in a 7-game series. That would make the most sense. But you don't have full control over that. Now, that's a preferred. That's kind of what I'm thinking it will end up being, although the Flames are I think the Flames are heating up a little bit here. So the Flames could jump in here also. I don't know what the Golden Knights record against the Flames is. I didn't write that down. Or you could go against the Kraken, potentially in that wildcard spot. Vegas is 1-1 against the Kraken with 2 games remaining. The final 2 games of the season are against the Kraken. So that could have a lot of implications for playoffs on not only where the Vegas Golden Knights land, where the Kraken land, but also who you're facing when playoffs come around. So 1-1 against them. You're 0-2 versus the Oilers, which is not a good thing, but you still have 2 games left. You could tie that series up. And you're 1-2 versus the Kings, which, again, not great, but you have 1 game left. You could tie that up. Vegas Golden Knights, although they're sitting as like the 5th best record in the entire NHL, which is great. And they're the best in the Western Conference currently. They've suffered a lot of losses to their own division, the Pacific Division, of course. The Vegas Golden Knights are 9-8 versus their own division. Not great. Not great by any means. And that division, of course, is going to include teams, as mentioned, the Oilers, the Kings, Kraken, Canucks, Flames, and then Knights. Am I missing a team? Ducks. The Anaheim Ducks, which are at the bottom of the league. And you're 9-8 against those teams. And you're doing so good outside of those teams. You kind of take a look at the record here. You're 44-21-6, but you're 9-8 against your own division. Now, that's not great when it's going to come to this playoffs, when things are able to start, but it's regular season. Some of those games are, tough situations here, whether it be injuries, all that sorts of things. So, as we all know, hockey, regular season to playoff hockey is probably the most dramatic difference out of any sport. You can sit on a hot goalie, being a poor team, a wild card team, and if your goalie's hot, you can make a big time run. That's something you don't see much in other sports. So the Knights, they've struggled a lot, but they're in a pretty solid position here. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is kind of clinching scenarios for the Vegas Golden Knights. We'll pop back over here so we can see Jack Eichel. I believe this was the photo from the night he got a hat trick just a couple nights ago, and that was very fun to see Jack Eichel get a hat trick. Very happy that it was back on track, but, you got to be more consistent from Jack Eichel. I think it was in like a 7-game stretch without a point or without a goal, and then he gets a hat trick. I don't remember if he got a goal last night, so you'd like to see a little bit more consistency from Jack Eichel. Nonetheless, clinching scenarios for the Vegas Golden Knights. The cutoff for the playoffs sits about 104. The Vegas Golden Knights with 94 would have to win 5 more games out of, the last 10 or so, and before the season's over. So go 500, you clinch the playoffs. But that's the bottom. That's clinching the bottom. That's like you're making the wild card 100%. You're making the playoffs, but you don't know what seeding you're going to be. What is it going to take for the Vegas Golden Knights to clinch the number 1 seed? If we jump back over here, the Kings are only 2 points behind. And you face the Kings one more time. So you could make that 4 ahead for sure comfortably. Edmonton, you play one more time. Edmonton is 2 games behind, so you have a little bit of a lead there. And then the Kracken are 5 games behind. So you could clinch a top 3 seed in about 2 more wins. 2 or 3 more wins would clinch you a top 3 seed, which would be great. That would mean that you're not in the wild card. That would mean you're 100% above the wild card, and you'd at least be playing a 2, 3, or wild card seed. That's how that would play out. So 2 or 3 more wins is going to clinch you a top 3 seed, which is great news. Now, you have a 2-game lead on the Edmonton team right there. So if you have, and we'll pull this up right here because I don't remember how many games the Vegas Golden Knights have remaining in the season, and I want to know exactly before I give you a number here. I want to say they have like 10 or 11 games left, but I want to be 100% sure for you guys. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 games left. So you have a 4-point lead on the Oilers, which means if you won 9 games, you're 100% in. But I don't think that's going to be the cutoff because you also play the Oilers 2 times in here. If you beat them both of those occasions, now you only have to win 7. I'd say 5 more games won, including at least 1 win over the Oilers here, should be enough to clinch a top 2 seed in the Pacific. 5 more wins, 10 more points, that gets you 104. You just guaranteed your spot in the playoffs. And I'd say 104 should guarantee you above the Oilers. And especially if you get, say you rattle off 3 wins right here. You got the Flames, Oilers, and Oilers. If you can rattle off all 3 wins right there, that's almost enough for you to be clinching the 1 or 2 seed in the Pacific Division. I think that's enough right there to clinch a non-wildcard spot because now you're moved to 90. Now you're moved to 100 points. I don't think the Kraken are going to reach 100 points. Like, truly, I really don't think the Kraken will reach 100 points. They got 85 with 12 games left, which means they could get 24 at max. That would put you 109 if you won all the games. So I'm not sure if the Kraken will reach 100. So Vegas Golden Knights winning 3 more games, as like I said earlier, will clinch that top 3 seed. And the Oilers, with only 3 above the Kraken, I think you add more onto that. 5 wins should clinch you that top 3 seed. But then you have the Kings right on you, and I think that Kings spot and the Vegas Golden Knights is going to be down to the last 2 games. How good can Vegas do against Seattle in back-to-back games will probably be who's the number 1 seed in the entire Western Conference. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some shuffling on the Central Division. Maybe the Avalanche, the Stars, or the Minnesota Wild jump to the best seed in the Western Conference. But I think it's going to come down to Vegas or the Kings for the Pacific Division. So, clinching scenarios. Now, these aren't guaranteed. I'd say 3 games guarantees you, or these aren't guarantees. This guarantees you. I'd say 3 games should be enough to say they're not in the wild card. I'm not sure if that would be a clinching scenario, but it'd be pretty darn close. Then Edmonton, I'd say is 5 games, especially if you're able to beat them in that back-to-back coming up here against Edmonton. And then the Kings is going to come down to the very, very end here. It's going to be a very, very tight situation. And that's about it. There's not a whole lot left to cover at this point. It's just going to be more rambling. So my question to you, once again, as we look at this standings, who do you think will make the playoffs in the Pacific Division? And where do you think they will land? Actually, I do want to know where you think they'll land. Not just the Vegas Golden Knights. As mentioned, I think they're going to be the 1. But where do you see the Kings still being 2, or is Edmonton going to jump them? Is Seattle going to jump in the top? Who's going to fall to the wild card? What do you think is going to happen in this playoffs? Comment all that down below. I'd love to have a conversation with you guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like. It does a whole lot for the channel, and it helps me grow and get to an ability for more people to watch, which means we can have better conversations and produce, more better in-depth content for all you guys. And if you want to see more Vegas Golden Knights content, especially with the playoffs approaching, why not subscribe? We're going to have a whole bunch of content covering exactly that because there's so much to cover about the playoffs and the Vegas Golden Knights. So, if you want to see more like this, please subscribe. It means a lot to me. But as always, I hope it taught some today. Hope it made you smile. Hope it made you laugh. Something really important to me. Affects most day in a great way because every single day can be a great day if we all just put in the effort. And as always, you guys all be safe out there.